2018 years in teaching BTech and MTech students, along with guiding PhD and research scholars. He graduated as electrical engineer and acquired PhD in smart grid management. He has vast experience in executing research work and projects in the field of modern power system management, smart grid, renewable energy grid integration, electric vehicles, etc. He has authored a book and few book chapters and published around 35 research papers in conferences and journals of national repute. He is an invited expert for roundtable discussion on progress and challenges in the field of energy education at IIT Bombay. He is also a visiting faculty in Linus University, Sweden. He has delivered more than 20 expert lectures on power sector reform, renewable energy, microgrid, rural electrification, and allied fields in government and non-government organizations. I would now like to request Dr. Anwar to please take over this session.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the nice introduction. Very good morning to all who are present here in the online faculty development program on energy and engineering. I am very thankful to GL Bajaj Institute of Technology and Management in general, Department of Electrical and Electronics Engineering in particular, and specifically to Dr. Mohit Bansal, my old friend, for giving me the chance to share my thoughts in this online platform. Although we are far apart, but yes, the online has make us closer now. So thank you very much. Actually, the topic like renewable energy based microgrid is nothing new. We have started our efforts of developing renewable energy based microgrids way back in 2005. But yes, it has the capability to change the entire market dynamics of power system engineering or power sector. And why I am saying this, because when we thought of renewable energy, there are two options we have by which we can distribute the electricity generated coming from the renewable energy sources. One is through the large ground mounted power plants. Obviously, the advantage of that is you can make the electricity available at a much cheaper rate. But there are places, uh, although we have declared that now even we achieved 100% villageable electrification, but you will agree with me that there are households which are still out of electricity in India. And it is either not feasible or economically not viable that we make the grid reach those places. So the only option we have is we develop the microgrids, that is a smaller grids serving smaller households or dedicated load centers to distribute the electricity, generate there, distribute there, and develop a complete market through which we can make the trading easy. So renewable energy based microgrids are aimed at actually replacing the diesel generator based microgrids. But now the potential and the investment in renewable energy based microgrid is such a high level that it can completely change the new market dynamics. One of the greater advantages of microgrids are that their generating stations are near to the load centers. So obviously the transmission and distribution losses will be very, very small. But even though microgrids are not a popular choice among the investors because of only one thing, and that is the reliability of the supply. And in all these things, what plays an important role is either non-existence of conducive policy framework, or the policy framework is not known to the investors or the developers of the microgrid, and that plays a very, very important role. That is why I thought that I'll just focus my discussion not more on technicality of microgrid, but rather looking at it from the policy perspective view. So let's start about all these. So these are the contents of my presentation, which we will be going through. I have divided whole presentations into 7 segments. These are the 7 segments I am talking about. So let's start with the introduction of mini grid. We'll quickly rush through what micro and mini grids are basically. So a mini microgrid is small energy systems capable of balancing captive supply and demand resources to maintain stable services within a defined boundary. This is something very, very important to understand, that a national grid or an interconnected power system is also an energy system, but that is capable of balancing this supply and demand within a large boundary or without any boundary. So in that national grid or a large grid, no generating player is knowing that they are sending the power to which set of consumer. But in case of mini or microgrid, which is popularly actually known as a small grid, is that kind of energy system, that kind of power system, where you exactly know that to whom you are selling the electricity. So that is why we are saying that their demand load mitigation will be within a defined boundary. Small grids, which covers all the three type of small grids like nanogrids, microgrids, and mini grids, actually combine local energy assets, assets which is locally available, and all the resources, technologies into a system that is designed to satisfy the requirement of the host. Just a moment. Which can include factors as basic as electrification. So try to understand that when we look at microgrid, it is not only the electrification we are talking about, and as complex as integrating variable distribution energy sources in a balanced net zero system. So this is another challenge with the microgrid, that if you are generating in excess of your load, then how to deal with that one is a part of your microgrid strategy and microgrid management. So this is a typical microgrid structure where these are the basic constituents of a microgrid, which integrates storage, renewable energy sources, any storage vehicle kind of arrangement, or any other distributed energy resources to serve a common uh, load which is within a defined boundary. So this completes our microgrid, the basic constituents of microgrid. But microgrid at the same time is capable of uh, interacting with energy markets, weather forecasting, and nearby other microgrids, in order to make a cluster of microgrids, so that energy sharing can be made between the different microgrids itself. Microgrids as a policy, if we will look that in detail, but policy also enables that your microgrid should be grid ready. Means we should be in a position to provide grid connectivity to the microgrid as a policy instrument that is mandated. But even if that is not mandated, microgrids are most successful only if there is a backbone of a larger grid available, and that is why this becomes an optional choice, that whether you connect it to the national grid or not. But microgrid should be functioning in such a way that they should be self-sustained, means whatever load they have, these all sources should be able to uh, supply these loads on real-time basis. And in the recent practices, we also have an energy market where we can make some kind of trading arrangement between different players of the microgrid. Need of mini microgrids, like if we look at the drivers for mini and microgrids, then the prime drivers is the need of electrification in rural areas. So if there are areas where it is not possible to extend the grid connectivity due to technical limitations or economic viability, then in that particular areas, the only option we have is mini or microgrids. Then second thing is, even if we have electricity available at a particular area and the electricity is intermittent in nature, so in that particular case, development of a mini or microgrid will give us more resilient and reliable energy supply, which further will provide energy security to different consumers connected to that instantly grid. Then several authorities, several discoms are needed for grid optimization, and a local grid developed by pooling the different energy assets will optimize their resources more uh, stringently. Apart from that, uh, as transmission and distribution losses are uh, not there, because you are pooling we are pooling the local energy assets in order to create a mini or microgrid, then it is possible to develop low cost energy or energy at a lower tariff. But there are other things due to which still the electricity sold through the microgrid is at a higher rate compared to our electricity available from the national grid. Obviously, other drivers could be our environmental factors, higher efficiency requirements, and penetration of more renewable energy uh, into the national grid. Microgrids, by definition, is basically those grids which are initiated by local leaders. That is a group of businessmen, or a municipal authority, or a local government, that is county government, or it may be driven by utilities themselves. Utilities means discoms or cooperative societies. So microgrid has nothing to do with the large power system with the national grid, but rather it is managed locally and initiated by the local leaders. As far as their legal and financial structure is concerned, they are different at different places. I'll also give you a few examples where this point will be more clear, that why we are saying that legal and financial structures differ. And apart from that, one important aspect of microgrid is that they optimize both energy generation and energy usage. Means there is a source prioritization and there is a load prioritization, which must be inherent characteristic of a microgrid. So if we can incorporate all these things, that is support of local leaders, a constitutional or a legal framework for financial sustainability, and optimization of energy generation and load prioritization, then the uh, most kind and most suitable type of microgrid can be developed. Microgrids, by definition, is classified into three categories. Off-grid microgrids are those microgrids which operates in complete isolation, that is, they are not connected to any local utility network. Campus microgrid in size is slightly bigger than isolated microgrid or off-grid microgrids. They are fully interconnected with the discom, but they have their own autonomy, and they are capable of providing some level of service in isolation. So these kind of campus microgrid is like, we have generators in our premises, like each engineering college or each institution is having their own power backup. So when light goes or electricity is off, then in that condition, what we do is we switch on our power backup, and those power backup uh, now in that particular condition start acting as a microgrid. Third kind of microgrid is community microgrid. Community microgrids are more of a uh, operational arrangement than a technical arrangement, where we are integrating uh, the utility networks to serve multiple customers or services within a community. Like if you go into the power backup arrangement within a society, like say AWHO is a society where there is a power backup. Whenever electricity goes off, their own power backup teams come into picture. Similarly, in Delhi, if suppose there is a society in Vasant Kunj and they have their own arrangement of power backup, so that kind of larger microgrid is under the purview of community microgrid. Mini grids are basically large scale microgrids with multiple sources. And mini grids are developed by combining several microgrids. Mini grids are planned as microgrids, and then introduction of other features turned microgrid into mini grid. So mini grid is nothing but scaling up microgrid. So it is very important to understand that what is the line of discrimination when a microgrid turns into a mini grid. Although if you look into the policies, they do not discriminate between these two terminologies. The only thing is their sizes are different. Always remember that when I have gone through several policy documents, what I have realized that nano, micro and mini grids are not classified according to their sizes, but rather according to the features incorporated within an off-grid power distribution arrangement. So it may be possible that a mini grid sometimes is serving less number of people, less number of uh, households compared to microgrid. But the complexity will define that what are the features you are incorporating in off-grid power distribution network so that it can be called as nanogrid or uh, microgrid or mini grid. So these are some of the things which actually gives you a comparative uh, analysis between microgrid and mini grid, just of what we have already discussed, that microgrid is basically developed at a single household level or a small cluster house level, and it is usually powered by single type of many distributed sources. Single type of many distributed sources means, like suppose a diesel generator is powering the entire campus, so that becomes a microgrid. Or solar photovoltaic rooftop system is powering the whole resources, whole loads, so that becomes a microgrid. And usually they are having either DC type of distribution network or AC distribution network, and if required there will be an interconnectivity or interconversion between these two. Microgrid operates at relatively low voltages. Their monitoring circuitry and monitoring arrangement is quite simpler, and their like maintenance schedule uh, and their possibility of serving during isolated condition is less complex compared to mini grid. Mini grid, on the other way, it is developed to serve the multi-household level. Uh, a typical figure is houses, the number of houses are greater than 1,500, and usually the mini grid is powered by distributed energy resources that comprise of different types of resources as well, like say a combination of diesel and solar photovoltaic, a combination of solar photovoltaic and wind. Here, one thing I would like to let you know, that in research papers or in desktop research, if you can think of microgrid or you will go through the research papers, you will find that many type of hybrid microgrid has been researched upon. But on practicality, if you look, I have gone through a number of papers where a hybrid microgrid based on solar photovoltaic system and wind energy systems has been developed, and their feasibility analysis has been done, their reliability analysis has been done. But practically, it is very difficult to get both the resources at the same time. So what happens when we talk about the distributed energy resources of different type of nature on a particular place, then we also have to make a resource assessment that whether both type of resources are available at that time or not. But yes, mini grid is a larger grid compared to microgrid and requires more power. So just one type of source will not work. Then it is having a complete transmission and distribution system so that it can provide end connectivity to the nearest utility, and it may operate at different voltage levels. In mini grid, your load prioritization and source prioritization is also carried out, and if required, load scheduling is also incorporated. So its complexity will be much more than our microgrids. So while going through different documents, we have seen that while it comes to scaling up a microgrid, so microgrids are divided into different levels. So microgrids, like the basic level of microgrid, that is called level 1 of microgrid, comprises of just one generator, that too works on standalone mode. So standalone or isolated loads are being served at the first level of our microgrid. Now, obviously, as we go up from level 1 to level 6, the complexity will increase. So as we go up from 1 to 6, our complexity will increase. But at the same time, the size of the microgrid will also increase. So if we go to the second level is basically integrating the distributed assets plus one more diesel generator unit. So that is called a second level of microgrid, where distributed energy resources or distributed assets are also uh, integrated along with the standalone generator. Then the third level, which actually makes, like if you look this line, after this the commercial microgrids came into existence. These are the microgrids which is technically feasible, no doubt, but not very commercially successful. So for commercial successfulness, we need to at least start with the level 3 of the microgrids, where not only the local assets but also renewable energy sources, energy storage, and a full-fledged microcontroller has to be there so that we can go for the source prioritization. Source prioritization means at a certain time, suppose you have wind is also available and solar is also available, and you have also a battery storage. So if all the resources are available and you have to serve a particular load, then which resource will be taken up first? Whether the load will be first served by the uh, solar, or we will directly power it through the energy storage, or we will take wind as first. So that kind of arrangement through the microgrid controller is the basics for commercial or industrial use of microgrid, which is actually third level of microgrid scaling up. Then in the fourth level, whatever is here in the third level will be there, but load prioritization will also be featured. Load prioritization means actually in as I have already told you that microgrid serves within a closed boundary. So suppose in a particular closed boundary means not closed walls, but closed boundary means your load is defined, that okay, these are the households you will be serving through this microgrid, or this hospital you will be targeting, this school you will be targeting, and this educational institution you will be targeting. So load management or load prioritization is to define the critical loads first, and if you are short of electricity, that is there is a mismatch between your load and the generated power, then which are the load which will be on priority. So that is called load prioritization. So source prioritization is incorporated in the third level, and in the fourth level we will go for the load prioritization as well. And all that military applications, that is In the military bases, microgrids are there. They are self-sustained power systems are there, which actually have these two features. So combined together, they are having this one. Now, fifth is basically where most of the microgrids nowadays works, and that incorporates all the features of microgrid of level 4, that is source prioritization, load prioritization, and integration of all the local energy assets. Apart from that, three more features are included, and that is, first is forecasting. Forecasting, like generation forecasting or weather forecasting, because in the fifth level, the role of renewable energy sources becomes very, very prominent. And if we have adequate forecasting mechanism, then we can reduce the uncertainty coming out of the variability in the resources. So weather forecasting and generation forecasting is an inherent feature for the actual microgrids which needs to be deployed. Apart from that, economic dispatch. So economic dispatch, so you can understand that this is having more or less same kind of feature which a national grid or a larger grid has, but on a lower scale. In the sixth level, we develop algorithms for providing coordination and optimization of microgrid assets. Uh, Coordination and optimization through a proper control strategy of multiple assets of the microgrid is slightly typical right now on research stage. Like if you go through the softwares, you will find that there are many research going on optimization of assets, but on practicality, when the microgrid is actually serving or microgrid is actually functional and serving to provide the electricity to a group of people, then in that condition, we are still at level 5. Their optimization is not being done. So this is an introduction of the microgrid, that what microgrid is all about and why we need the microgrids, and secondly, how microgrids can be scaled up. Now, if we, before going into the indigenous problems and their solutions, we will going through a brief about what is the global status and trends about the micro and mini grids. Are we Indians or the developing countries only talk about the micro and mini grids, or the developing world is also talking about the micro and mini grids? You will see that interestingly, we are not the leaders in micro and mini grids, even though we need it most. And more surprising is that it is the US where the most investment in micro and mini grids are coming over last decade. So why they are also doing it, and what is the global status, and what is the scaling up trends, we will be looking at that one. So there are several reports, like UN uh, in 2018 has in a report said that uh, for the right kind of expansion of electricity access, that is energy for all, uh, microgrids, renewable energy based microgrids and mini grids are the only cost effective and sustainable solution. There are several reports came out from USAID, IRENA, which says that microgrids are having the capability for scale up deployment and long term reliable operation as far as expansion of electricity network is concerned, but that lies within a policy and a regulatory framework. So what they emphasize that right kind of policy and regulatory framework will provide right kind of facilities for expansion of electricity access. See, worldwide there are many microgrids, but none of the microgrids are as successful as a national grid. The reason being, either we do not follow, or either the developer did not follow the policy and the regulatory framework, or the policy and regulatory framework was not present at that time, or policy and regulatory framework is not known to the developer. Because I always say that for anything to succeed, there are three things which is mandatory. One is their technical feasibility, economic viability, and third is societal or environmental acceptability. But apart from these three things, one more thing which is very, very prominently required is a right kind of policy and regulatory framework, so that your technical feasibility, economic viability, and environmental aspects can be protected by some government. Because unless until you have a right kind of policy and regulatory framework, ultimately where we will be having the problem is dispute settlement, and dispute is bound to happen whenever there are multiple players. Anywhere the dispute is bound to happen. So in if your policy and regulatory framework is inadequate or you are not known to it, simply there will be a problem during the dispute settlement. Now, what happens that several bodies, like I have already told you, UN, USAID, IRENA, there are several other bodies which is also advocating that the countries should set targets and design dedicated policies to support the mini and microgrid deployment and scaling up. Like we have the renewable energy targets, then they are saying, they are advocating that we should have micro and mini grid targets as well, and we should design our policies dedicated around those targets. Anyway, right now I just give you that how there is no microgrid targets has been set yet in any countries, but yes, there are 7 to 8 countries which are taking huge lead in deployment of mini and microgrids. Now, what is in addition to that which can make our renewable energy based, or more specifically solar photovoltaic based microgrids popular, is the dramatic cost reduction in the technologies. Like if you look, the price of the solar panel has dropped down like anything during last decade. So if you have one off grid microgrid in mind, 10 years back the cost is something else, but now the cost has dropped down to around 10 times. Then IRENA, that is International Renewable Energy Network Association, estimates that approximately 133 million people were served off grid technologies in 2016. And in the days to come, that is from 2016 to 2020, at least 9 million were connected to the renewable energy mini grids, and 124 million utilized solar lighting solutions. Anyway, so you can look at this figure, that will give you more appropriate view. And if we can look at this, so this is basically a graph developed by IRENA. And if you look, this is how the figures are. It is 136 million people have been served by off-grid renewable energy solutions, and this off-grid applications are through the microgrids. And what is interesting to note here, that globally when we look, it is the solar lights we are targeting. It is the solar lights we are targeting. Now, electricity uh, has to look beyond the lighting, and that is one of the concepts I always consider, that electricity is not about lighting only. Although we, our parent organization TERI, has an ambitious program called Lightning a Billion Lives, LABL. It was a flagship program of Dr. R.K. Pachauri that was launched somewhere in 2008 to uh, light 1 billion uh, off-grid locations within India. So if you look solar lights, it is like just solar lantern kind of thing. That is, you charge some solar lights during the daytime and distribute it to the people. So that is also, you can say, a microgrid arrangement where you are not creating any distribution network to reach the electricity. Rather, you are basically making an arrangement so that the purpose of electricity is being transported. Not the electricity is being transported, but the purpose of electricity is being transported. Like in the remote locations, the laying down of wire becomes more costly than transporting a light through some people. So what we do is, instead of laying the distribution network, what we used to do is we hire some people which will distribute the lights to different houses. So that kind of arrangement is uh, occupying more space on this bar graph, followed by solar home system. Solar home system is beyond lighting only. There will be a charging, mobile charging point also. There may be a fan also, and like that one. Solar mini grids, which is having a full-fledged electricity distribution network, is serving smallest uh, kind of fraction. Biomass mini grids are nowadays not very popular. Yes, hydro mini grids are popular, but only in those areas where hydro potential is there. Like in North America, Costa Rica, and all, they are largely dependent upon hydro mini grids. So, as a conclusion, what we can see that the number of renewable energy microgrid has grown steadily over the past decade. So this is the trend line. If you look, this is an exponential growth. Small hydro mini grids are most widely accepted in Northern America, but throughout the world, it is the solar mini grids which is more popular. Uh, Reduction in cost, uh, like in solar photovoltaic panels, has basically increased the capacity of off-grid applications from 11 megawatt in 2018 to 308 megawatt in 2017. And the total number of people were served by only solar photovoltaic off-grid application is around 2.1 million in 2016, as reported by IRENA. So this is what how our technologies has been matured, cost has been dropped down, and the people have started realizing the need of mini grids and microgrids, and that is why the deployment becomes easy. So this is the number of people connected to renewable energy mini grids by technology. So if you look, this is the large part is solar, some with biomass, and hydro. Hydro is having importance because Costa Rica is one of the countries which is claiming that they are 98% renewables, means their electricity is coming 98% from the renewable energy sources. And that 98% is basically the hydro. So there there is no demarcation of a large hydro or a small hydro, but yes, in India only the small hydro, that is a project which is having a capacity of less than 5 megawatt, only comes under renewable energy. So we are not much focused on hydro mini grids, but yes, we are focused on solar mini grids, that is the off grid application, which is although grid ready, but largely it is off grid and isolated systems which is governed by the load. And it is not new. In the last decade, if you look, it is the solar which is dominating over the entire mini and microgrid market. So scaling up renewable energy mini grid deployment is one of the thing which should come into our mind, that how to scale it up, how to increase the share of power generated from the mini and microgrid. So obviously, in the days to come, mini and microgrids will certainly play an important role due to its popularization, and it is estimated that during next 15 years, like estimated at 2016 in a report by IEA, International Energy Association, it has been developed, it has been realized that between this energy sources will power, that is renewable energy will power around 60% of the total new connections, of which approximately 40% will be through the mini grids. So all new connections which is coming on the national grid is basically diverted towards the mini grids, and 40% of them will be coming from the mini grids only. So this is one of the target, and you will find that this is not arbitrarily selected figure. They have made the right kind of survey research and desktop research to come to this particular figure, and I'll also let you know. But the thing is, uh, there are several things we have to work upon, and only then we will be able to scaling up the renewable energy mini grid deployment. And these factors are basically spread over many things, which is uh, started with the policy and regulations. Right kind of policy and the regulations is basically the basic of scaling up of our renewable energy microgrid. In absence of that, we will not be able to scaling up. Secondly, selection of right kind of technology. Selection of right kind of technology is not only availability of the technology, but also we have to make a resource assessment of that particular area, and only then we can say that which type of technology will be more successful. Because if you look at, you can say that okay, at this particular place solar photovoltaic based microgrids we will be developing, but in absence of a right kind of assessment, you will never know that whether your solar photovoltaic system is going to be very feasible there or not. So although in theoretically you can say that okay, this kind of arrangement we will be going for, but that might not be very much technically feasible. Like one of the examples is uh, uh, smart microgrid development in Pondicherry. So what happened that every framework has been prepared, policy and regulations has been prepared, but the thing is they didn't realize that there are not adequate rooftops available, so that they can develop the rooftop systems and then they can have a microgrid in the urban area. So what happens, they have to change the strategy to that one, and then ground mounted solar photovoltaic systems have been considered. Similarly, in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, where certainly the national grid extension of national grid is not very feasible, so in that particular case, the only option is like electricity distribution through the microgrids. So currently, all the microgrids in Andaman and Nicobar Island are running on diesel generators, because of the fact that the people do not have that kind of roof where rooftop can be developed, and there are not much lands also available there. So right now, we Terry is making a study on solarization of entire Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So these kind of things, that unless until we have all these six factors in mind and a proper study is being done, microgrids can be thought of but cannot be very successful. So starting with the right kind of policy and regulation, technological assessments, then capacity building, because capacity building uh, may be different from the capacity building on the conventional power sector. because here we are talking about the renewable energy based power grid. So if we are saying about the renewable energy based microgrid or a power system, then that kind of capacity will be built up, who can uh, say who can lay the foundations for the solar photovoltaic panels, or uh, uh, mm, lay the cables and all these things. Then institutional framework is that which type of organizations you will be targeting for development of policy and regulation, who will be investing, who will be developing the infrastructure. So institutional framework means you should have a right kind of strategy to approach right kind of organizations and institutions for uh, mm, carrying out right kind of policy assessment, technological assessment, infrastructure development and investment. And that is why a cross sector linkage is equally important, so that you can integrate all the stakeholders at a particular place. And also at last you should have a delivery and financing model, that how will you sell the electricity. This 6 is all about generating the electricity, but policy and regulation will also directly link to the delivery and financing models, because whatever electricity has been generated, you have to sell that electricity. And if you will sell that electricity, at what tariff you will be selling that electricity, and what kind of tariff you will be having, whether you will be having a flat tariff, or you will be having time of day tariff, or you will be having say prepaid kind of arrangement. So delivery and financial modeling is basically related to economic viability of all the efforts for accelerating off-grid renewable energy, microgrids and mini grids. So all these 6, unless until we will work upon, we cannot say for sure that our microgrid is going to be sustainable in future. So these 6 constituents of accelerating the off-grid applications will further let us know that what are the measures which will be required for scaling up the renewable energy mini grids. So they are classified into, the measures are classified into 3 categories: primary, secondary and tertiary. So this figure may give you more clarity, because it is the font size is very small. So this is nothing but I have just clipped this particular part and increased its font size. So primary measures, you can think, you can see, and you can realize that starts from the policy and regulations, that is national policy on energy and renewables. Fortunately, India is one of the countries which has started their national policy on complete electricity sector in 2003 through the Electricity Act 2003. And we have a national electricity uh, action plan, that is national electricity policy, uh, way back in 2005. So these primary measures are started with the national policy on energy and renewables, which we already have since 2005. Then uh, rural electrification strategy and master plan. Again, in the national tariff policy in 2005, we have already incorporated several sections for rural electrification. Then mini grid policy and regulations, which was seriously missing at that particular time, because mini grid policy and the regulations must be focused on first legal and licensing provisions, who can take part at which stage. Secondly, cost recovery and tariff regulations. Cost recovery is a huge challenge in case of mini and microgrids, that at what cost you can sell your electricity so that your payback period can be adequately reduced. So if you increase the tariff, your payback period will reduce, but the consumer will be burdened extra. Now, if the consumer will burden extra, Also we have to make a study that what is the paying capacity of the people there. Like you say that okay, we will sell the electricity at 8 rupees per unit, but at that particular place you have to actually see that whether the people there have the capability to pay 8 rupees for 1 unit or not. If not, then you have to change your tariff regulation, and you have to make a compromise between uh, payback period and tariff structure. Then grid connectivity will also be a policy and regulation matter, and who will provide the financial support for the deployment of mini grids. So primary measures are nothing to do with its technical standards, but rather it is all related to policy and regulations. And also we have to define the quality and standards for better compatibility arrangement. Like if we want to have clustering of microgrids, then in absence of a quality and standardization, one microgrid may not be able to communicate with the nearby microgrid. So clustering cannot be there. So these are the things which comes under the primary measures. This mini grid policy and regulations, bits and pieces we have started in 2003 itself, but full-fledged mini grid policy and regulations came into existence in 2016 only. Secondary measures are related to environmental and health protection, taxation, land acquisition, banking services, and the involvement of other stakeholders. So secondary measures are all related to how you provide adequate infrastructure for the development of microgrid. This is one thing. Secondly, how you are protecting the society there also. Like if you say that okay, you will be developing a microgrid, but for that you need to uh, cut 1000 trees. So what happens that you are directly impacting the environment. Maybe at that particular place microgrid brings some advantages, but at the cost of some environmental problem. So what happens that secondary measures are all related to scaling up the infrastructure through adequate banking and financing facilities, land acquisition mechanism, but at the same time providing a measure for protecting the environmental aspects. Tertiary measures are related to its technical assistance and capacity building, whether you will have dedicated manpower uh, coming from outside, or you are developing the capacity, you are developing the manpower there itself. Like I'm just giving you an example that while during the initial phase of renewable energy, when Suzlon developed wind farms near Jaisalmer, what happened that the people used to steal the cables for distribution of electricity, because those cables are very heavy, so they used to just cut it and sell it into the local market. But what happens that Suzlon devised a way to groom the local people for like maintenance activity or security activity and all those things. So what happens, this right kind of capacity building exercise stop that practices, because then what happened, those local people can only tell you that okay, this is for our advantage, or because in the short term you steal a you provide, like if you just snatch or steal a cable and sell it into the local market, you will get immediate some money. But what you are not seeing is the long term goal, that if you do not do that, then what happens that the electricity will reach to you. So that kind of thing will uh, mm, came up only after the capacity building exercise has been carried out. So capacity building exercise is an important aspect for the successful deployment of mini grid, because the local people, you if you are a developer, if I am a developer, I must take the local people in confidence. Only then they will take the electricity, or they will use the electricity. and also they will protect the energy assets in their vicinity. Statistics and data collection for any energy analytics or energy research kind of thing, and also synergies with the other sectors, like not only the electricity, but suppose thermal requirement is there or hot air requirement is there, and if there is an industry where nearby, suppose there is a cold storage there, so you can also supply them to cold air. So these kind of synergies has to be established in order to popularize the microgrid, because in the longer term you cannot just look at one aspect of microgrid, that is providing lighting or providing electricity. You have to expand it. Unless until you will be expanding it, it will not be possible. So these are like 8 countries which has taken measures, structured measures for supporting the mini grids in their jurisdiction. If you look, it is the Indonesia and Tanzania and Rwanda which is having most adequate structured uh, primary, secondary, and tertiary measures. So this is how the light pink is basically showing you the implemented measures. So like say I'm coming to India. India is also one of the prominent countries under mini and microgrid. Out of these are the 8 leaders actually, apart from other in the developing countries, and these are the, like, India is having a national policy on renewable energy. Post 2016 we have that. Rural electrification strategy has been made in 2005 itself. Then mini grid policy and regulations. So we have paved way for grid connectivity while mini grid is arrived. Then legal and licensing provision, who can participate and how dispute settlement will be carried out. Similarly, cost recovery and tariff regulations, quality and standards have also been defined. And also IREDA is providing a financial support if it is renewable energy based microgrid. So financial support, nowadays each bank is and financial institution have a separate wing for renewable energy based microgrids and renewable energy based projects. But IREDA is a governmental company which provide low cost funds for renewable energy projects. So India is having all the primary measures intact. Secondary measures, they are having all these things. Land acquisition is a big problem in India, because they actually leave it on the people. Although several states have special economic zones, but those are, I would say, largely political arrangement than technical arrangement for facilitating renewable energy projects. So land rights and use, we still do not have a centralized policy or state, even a state level policy, that changes from time to time. And like you can understand that what happened to Tata Nano plant in Singur in uh, West Bengal, and that has to move to Gujarat due to land use. So similar kind of microgrid applications, similar problem occurred with Husk Power in Bodh Gaya. Similar problem occurred with Edison in Sundarbans of West Bengal. So land acquisition and its use is a big problem in India. In countries like Indonesia, that is not a big problem because they do not have that kind of national grid which we have. Our national grid is having an installed capacity of 372 gigawatt, and out of that, around 19% is coming from renewable energy sources, 20% is coming from the renewable energy sources. So our national grid is very, very strong, and that is why if we look at the mini and microgrid policies, they do not address much of the issues and leave it to the developer. So land right and use, they have leave it to the developer. Banking facilities are very, very strong because that is needed. Financial institutions has to support the uh, so the policy is also there, and the financial mechanism is also there. and we are dealing well with the uh, other sectors. Other sectors means transportation sector, or uh, like wood industries and all those things, because when you have a full-fledged microgrid, you want to sell your electricity and you want to expand your presence. So your presence can be uh, expand only if you will have more loads on your mini grid. So other sectors and a synergy with them is very, very important in your near vicinity. So microgrid in several places came up only because initially the people want electricity, but later on that has been expanded because some industry has also been developed in the near vicinity. Yes, technical assistance, capacity building, and data collection and data upkeep, we are always very lazy in this particular part, where data, like if you go into Germany, you will find that all the resource assessment for last 10 years, 20 years, they are having their own repository. But in India, if you want to develop a mini grid, say in Delhi, then it will be very difficult for you to actually get the solar radiation data for last 20 years at a particular place, because we do not have a good repository for that one. So what happens that these kind of arrangements we need to make for statistical and data collection arrangement. There are other countries also like Rwanda, Tanzania. I am not taking that one in detail, but you can understand that the countries where the national grid is not very strong, obviously they need more uh, mini grids in existence so that they can serve their people with electricity and beyond electricity as well. We uh, we need mini grid policies to be in existence, because of the fact that even if our 372 gigawatt installed capacity is there, but still around 400 billion people is out of electricity. So this is the renewable energy microgrid momentum. North America, China, and Australia are the leading countries. So this is where the commercial projects are basically in existence. But India, although in this figure it is showing that India is into the planning stage, but not. India is having now several demo projects and also several commercial projects. So India has actually moved to this color now, that is light orange color, not at this particular color. It is a previous figure, that is around 2016. This has been developed by GPM, and at that time they have actually assessed that how many microgrids are in existence. But a recent figure I'll show you, and you will immediately came to know that we are actually here now. Now, this is how the annual total microgrid power capacity and implementation spending of other. So spending is there. So if you look, this is how we are going. So if you look at this one, this is the installed capacity on this axis, and this is the investment in $1 million. So Asia Pacific, which comprises of China and India, has the maximum investment and maximum installed capacity coming from the microgrids, followed by North America, followed by North America. This is North America, Middle East and African countries. It is basically normally the East African countries which is participating in microgrid, because their national grid is not very strong. And this is how you can see that how the total investment is coming. Around $35,000 million is invested during last decade in microgrids only, that to renewable energy microgrids, and the total installed capacity is somewhere around 20,000 megawatt, that is 20 gigawatt. So this is capacity by region. Most of the operational microgrids are basically in North America. as I have already told you, because they are having ample amount of potential from the hydro. So most of the hydro based microgrids are in North America, which accounts for around 43% of the total wagon wheel of microgrid worldwide. And Asia Pacific, that is China and India and Bangladesh and Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, that accounts for around 36%. Rest of the countries, like the entire Europe, is just 14%, and the rest of the world is having dismal or minimum percentage over the operational microgrids. So operational microgrids are a purview of Asia Pacific, which is growing very fast. Northern America, they are now not investing much, but yes, for the last 1 decade, they have invested like anything, even more than China. This is operational microgrid power capacity by segment. So largest part of microgrid is meant for off-grid isolated applications. That is remote applications. Around 40% of them are off-grid isolated applications. And commercial or industrial applications are around 24%. So commercial or industrial units have their own microgrids in the form of virtual power plants sometimes, or direct mini grids or microgrids. So these two accounts the maximum, and this sector is still growing. This sector is also still growing, but instead of setting up a microgrid, they are more interested nowadays in setting up their captive power plants, or they take the electricity through open access. Anyway, but military bases have their own power system in existence that accounts for around 6%, and institutional campus through their power backup arrangement is one of the greatest share, that is around 17% of the total wagon wheel of microgrid capacity by segment. So you can see that if I am a developer, if I am a microgrid developer, then I would first choice I will have is to invest in the remote and off-grid applications, or commercial or industrial applications, or I'll go for institutional microgrids where within a campus I can sell my electricity. Like in our Terry University, we have a 48 kilowatt rooftop system, and that is a microgrid developed by some other company, and they are selling us the electricity with a long-term power purchase agreement. So we have created a microgrid of 48 kilowatt, that is an institutional microgrid, but we did not invested in that. Some other company invested in that, and that model you might be knowing is called a RESCO model. So this is how the aspirations for next 5 years or 4 years, that is from 2020 to 2024, Technovia has made a research, and they have seen that the total market growth with compound accelerated growth rate is 13% within this. So the total investment will also more specifically by 12.34%, with a total investment within the 5 years will be $18.89 billion. And that is an incremental investment. That is, this is not we are talking about that has already been invested. This is what is another $19 billion we will be investing in the next uh, uh, 5 years, with most coming from North America. That is around 28% will be originated from there only. And the net driver for doing all these will be the government support. If the government supports only, then we can do that. Technovia is also saying that in the next 5 years, more than 17,000 industrial units will have their own microgrids through captive power plants. So another thing which is in between, I just want you to look at is solar energy for microgrid, because most of the microgrid applications, if we talk about, is basically solar based, and most of the microgrids developed on solar based because solar resource assessment shows that it is the renewable energy which can be uh, harnessed which easily on wide scale basis. The only thing is we need two things: right kind of technology and right kind of policy support, of course beyond financial support. So renewable energy can be distributed on two mechanisms: on grid applications, off grid applications. And if we look at off grid applications, solar energy is a popular choice, whereas other technologies like wind and others are for on grid applications largely. Solar is one of the arrangements which is equally applicable in case of off-grid applications, that is microgrid, and on-grid, that is large-scale ground-mounted solar photovoltaic power plants. So when we look at this one, solar photovoltaic system is the choice for mini and microgrids, whereas solar thermal applications is a part of our conventional grid largely. Solar PV is having 10 means three kinds of classification. Picosystem is like the solar lighting, 10-watt lanterns or something, or radios, or FM units. So solar photovoltaics can be used to power them. So that is a pico system. That system is very, very popular in very rural areas where there is no possibility of electricity, and the people are of low income group only. Solar home systems are a larger home systems where not only lighting or FM is there, but also like mobile charging stations or battery charging stations or TV sets can run. Solar mini grids are greater than 5 kilowatt peak mini grids, which can serve loads for a cluster of houses within a village or hamlet. That comes under the category of. And why I am saying that solar energy for microgrid is what we are targeting for the next decade is basically due to this, that the global population without electricity is falling, but not on the track to achieve the universal energy access by 2030, that is SDG 7, Sustainable Development Goal 7, which says that clean and affordable energy. So clean and affordable energy is what is related to energy access or energy for all. And India is basically uh, without electricity, it is around more than 200 million people, which is out of electricity still. So what happens that what is available everywhere is solar. The only thing is we need to have right kind of policy, right kind of technology, so that we can actually popularize the distribution of electricity generated through the solar photovoltaic plants to the adequate number of people. So these are the global leaders in microgrid startups: Green Energy Corp, or Move Over Electric Vehicle. It is actually Move. So these two are US based companies, and Green Energy Corp is targeting for solar photovoltaic based microgrids, whereas Move is it is actually Move Over Electric Vehicles, but they are into the business of microgrids largely through the storage systems, and these two are originated in North America. This FOHAT is a startup, is a Brazilian startup, and this Brazilian startup is largely focusing on off-grid applications, uh, whereas Switched is an Australian startup which is distributing electricity through microgrids, and these are the world leaders. Actually, what happened that uh, uh, IRENA and IEA has started looking up for funding to startups who are investing in renewable energy based microgrids. So they have finalized 413 startups globally, and out of that, 4 is like the leader in terms of technology, in terms of their installed capacity, and these are the 4. Although we do not have to do anything with these, but this is something you need to understand, that the people is actually looking at the companies where they can invest for development of microgrids. So micro and mini grids in Indian context, this is where I will like to quickly let you know about this one, that at the end of 2016, we are having around 200 million people without electricity. It is at the end of 2009, we were having 400 million people without electricity. So these are some of the other countries which is out of electricity. You can see that there are other countries, but their installed capacity is not very high. India is the only country where there is 372 gigawatt of installed capacity, but still 200 million people is out of electricity. 400 million is an older figure. So this is the figure I have already let you know, that this is around 200 million people at the end of 2017 out of electricity. That accounts for 13.7% of our total generation. So 13%, 13.7% of our total generation is out of electricity, and that is very alarming. And even we have a full-fledged national grid, we cannot electrify some of the areas. What is interesting to understand, that in like 2017, at the end of 2017-18, India has invested around $18 billion in making those reach electricity to those who are out of electricity. So yes, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and this is how it is being driven. So this is a national figure where you can see that uh, this is 30% and below people is having electricity as the main source of lighting in the state of Bihar, and rest like 30 to 50% people have electricity as the source of light in Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, Jharkhand, and Arunachal Pradesh. Similarly, these are some of the states like entire South, Gujarat, Delhi, Haryana. They are only having 90% of the people and above with electricity as the lighting source. So if you look from the investment point of view, I would say that this orange and red is where you should invest in microgrids, because the prime thing of microgrid is to distribute the electricity in the form of lighting equipments. So this is the latest figure of various microgrids field projects in India. You can look at most of our micro projects are located in this area: Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, West Bengal, Jharkhand, and some at Tamil Nadu and all these areas. Few at Gujarat and Rajasthan, and this area like Sikkim. And Sikkim, interestingly, has very good electrification, but although uh, still they are having some microgrid projects. And if you look here, this triangle, the blue triangle, says that these are the hydro based projects, whereas a large part of our microgrids are based on solar photovoltaic system. A couple of systems in the region of Bihar and West Bengal is on husk power, like rice husk and biomass or biogas based this generation. So these are some of the micro grid field projects in India, and it is certainly a good sign, because if so many microgrids are there, then in the days to come, uh, uh, we will not be out of electricity. And this is what I was saying you, that solarization is also taking up in the islands. So there is a there is an institutional framework prepared by Transformative Technologies, in association with Tata Power and Rockefeller Foundation, and they target to provide electricity to 5 million households and more than 1 lakh small enterprises over next 5 years. So right now, the uh, TP Renewable Microgrid, TPRM, is the enterprise which comprises of transformative technologies, Tata Power and Rockefeller Foundation, is having 200 cities they are targeting, mostly in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. It is the phase one of their target, and they will be scaling up in next 6 years to cover the entire country, where more than 1 lakh small enterprises they will be targeting to provide assistance to power more than 5 million households. So this is what is the target India aspires for, that within next 6 years the entire country will be with the electricity, and the most part of country which will be having microgrids through this initiative will be Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, West Bengal, Jharkhand, and uh, Assam. So this is what is they are targeting for the next 5 years. Microgrid and minigrid key policy instruments, as I have told you, that in the Electricity Act 2003, we have already paved way for the policies which will be popular for micro and mini grids scaling up. And two specific policies, one is called Rajiv Gandhi Gramin Vidyutikaran Yojana, where the objective is to electrify 1.15 lakh unelectrified village, and free electricity connection to 2.34 crores BPL rural households. And this is what we aspire for in the year 2005, because rural electrification program was launched in 2000 electricity 5. This was a mega project where we had 4,900 crore rupees. Out of that, 3,544 crore rupees has been spent till 2011 and 12. But 90% of the total project cost was bared by Government of India, with a budgetary allocation of 33,000 crore rupees, and it has been electrified around 1 lakh 35,000 villages. So this is what Rajiv Gandhi Gramin Vidyutikaran Yojana has basically given laid down the foundation for preparing the policy framework for micro and mini grids. Now there are challenges, obviously, we faced, and mostly the policy problem was related to an inadequate monitoring mechanism. An inadequate monitoring mechanism lead to limited availability of manpower and bad quality material, a bad selection of equipments, and sometimes not making a transparent system of payment collection as well. So Rajiv Gandhi with Vidyutikaran Yojana, although went very well, and but it created later on some hurdles, which has been overcome by another scheme that is called Saubhagya, and that is Pradhan Mantri Sahaj Bijli Har Ghar Yojana, which was launched in uh, 2017, and with a target to provide around last mile connectivity to all the rural and urban households by 31st December 2018. So in the 2018 only, we have declared that we 100% electrification has been completed, village level electrification has been completed, but still household level electrification we have not yet received. And but what happens that it has paved way for further financial assistance, and the total outlay was 16,320 crores has been given for rural electrification, that too based on renewable energy sources and targeted for 4 crore households. So this is one of the uh, things which summarizes the that is Saubhagya Yojana. And this Saubhagya Yojana is basically saying that the total budget for this is 16,320 crores. Out of that, the gross budgetary support for the development of microgrid is 12,320 crores. Rural household and urban household is already given here. You can go through that one. And this is something very interesting to see, that Saubhagya is also focusing on the same states which I have shown you by this figure. So they are actually targeting the same states which has been targeted by TPRM. So right kind of investment at right places like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, uh, West Bengal, uh, and so this is how, because these are the places where the people are largely not having the access to electricity. So this is the estimation of unelectrified households. Total number of households are like 17,096 lakhs households are still needs to be electrified, and in the days to come we are targeting. So you can see that government of India will provide the grant to 60% of the total project cost in some of the cases, and some of the cases 85% of their project cost, and accordingly other financial institutes and grant disbursing bodies are there, we can target for that one. So Saubhagya is one of the yojanas where it is adding up the Rajiv Gandhi Vidyatikaran Yojana. So the foundation stone has already been laid down in 2003, 2005. Policy, that is foundation for dedicated policy, has been laid down, and financial mechanism is also been uh, finalized, and in the Saubhagya further it has been strengthened now. And out of that, a full-fledged national policy for renewable energy-based micro and mini grid came into existence in 2016, although the draft has been prepared in 2012 by Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. So I'll be quickly focusing on what are the key of this national policy. So the principle of the policy is to streamline development procedures for enhancing the access to affordable energy and provide an operational framework for the discoms to distribute the electricity, and access to central financial assistance, and incorporating innovations in mini grid models. So these are the 5 focus points of the principles for national policy. The objective of the policy is to obviously promote the deployment of mini and microgrids powered by renewable energy sources, and paved way for participation of SCOs, that is energy service companies. Here energy service companies has been redefined, that any person or a group of person or local authority which intends to develop microgrid based on renewable energy will be termed as energy service companies, whether they are registered under Company Act or not. So the ministry has a target to uh, develop 10,000 RE based micro and mini grids across the country, with a capacity varying between 50 kilowatt to 500 megawatt for the next 5 years. So this is how micro and mini grids are defined, that mini grids are basically the grid with a capacity of 10 kilowatt and above, with a full-fledged public distribution network, that is distribution system, that is called mini grid. Microgrids will be having the capacity of less than 10 kilowatt, and they uh, in general will be operating in isolation, but will be having a full-fledged public distribution network for distribution of electricity. So there are two systems of configuration. One is AC microgrids, another is DC microgrid. So what happens that hybrid systems are also promoted where diesel based generator can be used as a backup, but DC microgrid and AC microgrids are having their own voltage standard, that is up to, if it is a DC microgrid, up to 1 kilowatt they will run at 24 volt DC, but greater than 1 kilowatt till 10 kilowatt they will be running at 70 volt 72 volt DC, whereas AC microgrid will run at 220 volt AC up to 10 kilowatt, and beyond 10 kilowatt it will be a three phase system 440 volt. So these are the types of consumers. See, consumers are actually important to classify. They are classified into 7 categories, especially for fixing the tariff or the billing structure. So first is household or residential consumer, agriculture consumer, commercial consumer or industrial consumer, then productive consumers, social institutions, government bodies or municipal functionalities. So these are the 7 categories of consumers, and these 7 categories of the consumers will have different tariffs. Like agriculture consumers will get the electricity for free. Residential consumers will be cross subsidized by the commercial consumers. Productive and milling, like productive consumers are those consumers which is having a local MSME, that is mini scale industries at the local level. So that their tariff structure is such that we want more and more to come and take electricity, because only then we can expand our electricity. Social institutions sometimes get subsidized electricity or sometimes for free. Government and like municipal functions are always having like time of day or free electricity or a flat tariff electricity tariff. So types of consumers in microgrid is classified as per the tariff structure or billing. So the cost structure of mini grid is having three types of cost. One is fixed cost. Fixed cost comprises of project development, then debt, and the managing the cost in managing the project. Variable cost is basically the cost which requires for running the microgrid. Like say, if it is diesel, then the cost of diesel. If it is solar, then obviously during the day you don't need any fuel cost, but during the night, if it is a some kind of a storage, so providing fuel to that kind of backup or storage will be the variable cost. So these are some of the variable costs. Revenue sources are the third type of cost structure, that how to provide the long-term sustainable operations, because it will require the projects recover the fixed and variable cost, and ESCOs, that is energy service companies, are able to earn a reasonable return with the shortest possible payback period. So revenue sources are those financial institutions which can actually invest in the microgrid projects. While determining the tariff structure, the first thing which should be strategized is aligning the mitigation of demand and supply. Secondly, for setting up a tariff for sale of electricity so that all this electricity can be sold to the local consumer. And pay as you go model is one of the popular mechanism for making a right strategy for tariff determination. That is, the more you use, the more you pay. Then whether we should go for a fixed tariff or pay and use tariff, that depends upon the consumer paying capacity. Then whether to take money for providing the connection or not, that is what will be the mechanism. You may distribute the electricity for free, and you only charge for whatever is being used. And grant and subsidy is always a policy instrument, And in case of national policy for microgrid, grants and subsidies for different sets of consumer has already been fixed. So while combining all these six, it should be kept in mind that tariff structure should always be transparent and should be fixed at least for 1 year. No like frequent changes should be there. And second important cap which the policy make is there should not be a 16% annual return on equity for the business venture, because business ventures will always want that they sell the electricity at such a tariff that their payback period should be reduced to 1 year or 2 year. But it is one of the mandated, it has been mandated by the national policy that the return should not be beyond 16% of their annual investment. Then policy, regulatory and implementation level interventions. So first of all, implementing partners, state nodal agencies, then public sector organizations, rural energy service providers, and financial institutions are the implementing partners. Then project site identification and development is the responsibility of a single window support channel. You just provide your application to them and they will give you all the information through a project information system. And finally, a single window will give you all the policy clearances. Then planning and development will be through an open market approach or a mixed market approach, depending upon which type of consumers we have. Then scaling up, clustering and size of projects has been defined, and there are four category. That is, most of the microgrids falls under category A, which is under 10 kilowatt to 100 kilowatt. Then there are several categories up to 25 250 kilowatt and above. So clustering of microgrids will let you move from category A to category B to category C or to category D. State nodal agency, the responsibility of the state nodal agency is to keep a record of all the mini grid and microgrid operations and their whereabouts, then provide guidance for technical and financial assistance, and also provide necessary assistance for grid connectivity if required. Then village energy committee is one of the body which is under the purview of panchayats, which ensure the connections for each household on priority basis, and also plan for identifying the households for scaling up these microgrid deployment. Service maintenance and ownership will always be with the energy service companies, and that is why energy service companies will be the last authority to finally to take decisions based on their technological implementations or financial viabilities. Performance and technical standards to be maintained by DESCOMs for each PDN, that is public distribution network, by providing service performance norms. So grid codes needs to be followed within the microgrids as well. Grievance redressal is basically with the help of village electrification committee, the head of which is a panchayat if it is a village level body, or tariff related disputes will be settled with the SERC, that is State Electricity Regulatory Commission. Financial assistance will be provided by NABARD and IREDA. Subsidy is obviously one of the things which is government of India is providing for micro and mini grid scaling up. Empanelment of rural energy service provided, all the scores in a particular area will combine together to form a rural energy service provider committee, and this rural energy service providing committee uh, will be required for all these things. So off-grid decentralized solar PV program, where central financial assistance pattern, if you look, this is the body we will be, this is the model we have, that 30% capital subsidy to the end user will be provided, 90% for special category states for defined category, and 40% through the bank coupled with the loan will be provided through Central Financial Assistance Scheme. And the implementing agencies are state nodal agencies, NABARD or IRIDA, as I have already told you as a policy matter. They will always pitch in whenever a microgrid player will be coming in a particular area. So this is the Central Financial Assistance Scheme for mini grid deployment, that is up to 10 kilowatt peak and 10 kilowatt to 500 kilowatt peak. And this is what they are giving, that 105 rupees per watt peak is will be providing a financial assistance from the central government to the microgrid developer, whereas 90 rupees. So different states will get this type of, and it is per watt peak. So for 10 kilowatt, you can multiply it and get the financial assistance. So this is the condition for availing the financial assistance, that these are the things which you must provide in your project document, or that is called DPR, that is detailed project report. These are the things you have to provide, only then you will get the microgrid financial assistance. One of the thing is minimum 30% of the total PV capacity should be utilized for domestic load and not for like selling it through open access or so. So in that way, these are the conditions for availing the financial assistance. This is just one example I have taken, that if you are a power player, or if you think of making research on mini grid, then don't just go through like softwares on MATLAB or Homer or any other software and do the research, but also make a financial viability of your project. So for 100 household, if you or me or anyone else wants to develop a mini grid, then these are the components you will be requiring. So these are the components you will be requiring, like I have just included 60 kilowatt peak as the power, which will serve around 50 kilowatt load. And it is having solar photovoltaic panels, battery banks, then the loads, then computers for monitoring, then other things we are considering along with pumping system. So this is how uh, an estimated cost structure has been prepared, and it has been seen that for 100 household, if we can assume that 50 kilowatt is the total generating capacity, then around 1 crore 81 lakh 10,000 rupees is what is the total investment required. Now over the years, the prices has been like dropped down. So now if I say that this 1 crore 81 lakh is the calculation we have made somewhere around 216, right now I think it is not even 1 crore rupees you will be requiring for this one. It is just a sample calculation. You can just go through that one, and a typical structure you can make for your mini and microgrid deployment. And this is the layout what we had finalized. That is, this is the typical solar photovoltaic mini grid, where these are the solar PV arrays, and this is the public distribution network system we have considered, along with power conditioning unit. Obviously that will be needed because this will give you DC, and for converting that into AC you will be requiring this one. Yes, battery bank is always optional, but if you do not have the battery bank, their isolated operation will always be questionable, because during the night time you won't be able to power these households. So this is the existing microgrid ventures in India. Saigar Islands in Sundarban is way back in 2005. It has been developed, successful model. They are running it. Husk Power in Champaran, Bihar, which has been established in 2007, is another successful example. Other firms which is into the microgrid business in India is like Naturatech Infra, Minda, Next Gen Tech. Gram Urja is one of the largest players in microgrid, which is largely focusing in UP and Bihar. Sun Edison is a foreign investor who is looking at microgrid development based on solar photovoltaic systems in Rajasthan and Gujarat largely, but later on they are also penetrating the South India market. There are, in a couple of minutes, I'll just quickly finishing it down. I think I'm already taken too much of time. So new emerging technologies in microgrids are peer-to-peer energy sharing and blockchain. So there are two technologies like peer-to-peer energy sharing. Peer-to-peer energy sharing is basically sharing the energy between ourselves. That is, you can see that there are 4 households I am considering here, and these households are having like 3 kinds of people. One is having facility of generating as well as consuming, another which is only consuming, and another which is only generating. So generating and consuming, that is called prosumer. Those who are only generating is basically producer, and those who are only consuming is consumer. So what happens that peer-to-peer energy sharing is a mechanism where a centralized peer-to-peer energy station will facilitate the participating households to share the energy between them whenever they are excess of electricity. So suppose I am a prosumer and I have a say 50 kilowatt rooftop, but my connected load is only 30 kilowatt. So 20 kilowatt I'll be sharing it with others, and this is what is called peer-to-peer energy sharing. Obviously, a trading mechanism can also be developed that I'll be selling, not only sharing, but I can sell the electricity to others. But in that way, what happens? Peer-to-peer energy sharing will also facilitate those consumers which cannot participate in energy transaction to get the electricity. So peer-to-peer energy sharing is one of the mechanisms by which you can share the electricity if you have excess of that, or you can borrow the electricity from your nearby household if you are out of electricity at a given time of the day. So this is what is peer-to-peer energy sharing, which is catching eye of researchers in the recent future. And second is called blockchain in microgrid. Blockchain in microgrid is basically a transactive mechanism of electricity within the microgrid, and in that particular case, each player is making a contribution in a peer-to-peer energy market. And in the peer-to-peer energy market like this one, that these are the players we have. This is the microgrid I was talking about. This is the distributed energy resources. And so this is how the transactive mechanism is doing in blockchain, that those who are generating the electricity, they are submitting the, it is a kind of energy bank where you will be transacting, means you will be depositing energy or you will be taking the energy, and you will be getting money out of the balance of your credit and debit. So transaction is submitted, whether it is supplying the energy or taking the energy. So that is added to the block. Then this block is being evaluated and distributed to different nodes of your microgrid, and that solves using a cryptographic currency, and you will be getting a transactive mechanism between what is left, that is how much you have supplied and how much you have consumed. And once it is verified by an automatic software algorithm, then your blockchain is added to the ledger, which is basically maintaining all the financial transactions. So with this, I end my presentation, and thanks for your patience hearing. And if anything else, I can answer the questions if you want me to. So this is all from my side. Uh, Now over to the organizers, please.
Thank you, sir. Any of the participants want to ask any question?
Hello.
Yes, please.
Uh, can you form? Can we form? Or can we connect the 4 5 microgrids together to form a power bank?
Yes, yes. So that is called actually clustering of microgrids. So in the clustering of microgrids, one thing is your technical limitations, but beyond technical limitations, we also have to look at the tariff structure and financial mechanism of all these 4 to 5 microgrids. But yes, we can connect them to form a cluster in order to make a peer-to-peer energy sharing between them, or even develop a private market for those microgrids only.
And can we connect such a cluster with national grid?
Yes, certainly the National Policy for Micro and Mini Grid 2016 enables the way for grid connectivity, but the only thing is we need to mandatorily adhere to the grid codes before we can connect it to the national grid. So we have to look at the power quality measures, and we have to stick to the power quality measures for the nearest point of interconnection to the grid. We can do that, and we do that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So any other questions from the participant side? I think we are done from the participant side. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for sparing time and giving us your valuable time for explaining us the various beautiful things about the power grid and the energy sectors in which we can work upon.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you
much
so
for
much, sir.
giving me this opportunity. Looking for
Thank you so much,
more
sir.
close association in future as well.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Okay, Rajat, I think I can leave now, or anything else I need to do?
No, sir. If you want, you may leave.
Okay, so you will continue in this session only, means in
Yes,
this
sir.
platform only.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you
Thank you,
all.
sir.
Good luck.
Thank you, sir. Participants, feedback link will be shared to you, and please fill the feedback form. Next session will start at 11:45. So please stay tuned.